This is the community of Sargo, situated in the most fertile part of Daviess County, west of Owensboro along Highway 56. Each year, thousands of acres of corn and soybeans are planted, and the tobacco barely hangs on, harkening back to an earlier time when it was the main cash crop. Much of the land around Sargo and Panther Creek once belonged to a prominent statesman and former president. James Madison owned about 2,000 acres, a fact noted by a historical marker along Highway 56. Sargo had its real beginning about 1812 with the arrival of George Calhoun.
He lived in Virginia at the time. He fought in the Revolutionary War under Lieutenant George Roger Clark. After the war was over, he moved here, Sorgho area. When he died, he ended up being buried right here. This is right next to Sargo.
Sargo began to develop in the mid-1800s as word got out about the productive farmland, good for growing corn and tobacco. There have been several names, among them McLean's Retreat, Dog Walk, and Sorghotown, named for the Daviess County Sugar Company. It was formed in 1868 to manufacture sugar from sorghum cane. The short-lived enterprise could not compete with more modern techniques for manufacturing sugar and failed. A few houses remained where the workers lived and formed the nucleus for a small town.
In 1869, right here was where the Sorgho Sugar Company was located for 2 years before it closed up. And it belonged to on the J.F. Kimberly farm. And right behind us here was the Balee farm. They had a racetrack back here, and they had once a month for like 6 months out of the year, they would have horse races, mule races, and trotter races. And these were some of the old people that lived here. They're buried back by Panther Creek back this area. There's not any houses left back in this area here now, but this is the main part of Sargo right here.
Sargo was organized as a voting precinct in 1874. By that time, the town had 2 dry goods stores, a tobacco factory, grist mill, sawmill, and blacksmith shop.
Right behind me is Frank Kamoff's home. This is the oldest home still left in Sargo. It was built like in the 1870s. Frank Kamoff had a tobacco factory right up the road here. He also he built wagons and stuff for people in the area.
3 other historic homes remain. The Bishop House off Ladane Bridge Road near the Audubon Parkway, built in 1850. The old Calhoun House behind Pleasant Grove Church, constructed in 1865. And the Mulligan home on Hayden Bridge Road near Panther Creek. It was built in 1879 by John Simeon Mulligan, a Civil War veteran who later served as the sheriff in Daviess County. Sargo was located on the Calhoun Road, which ran west from Owensboro to the Calhoun Ferry. The road was difficult to travel, and wagons would often get stuck in the sandy soil. A brief plan for an interurban electric line was scrapped after the county began graveling the road in 1906. That same year, a terrible tragedy claimed 3 lives at the Bellwood coal mine.
They set a charge off to bust the coal up. When it came back, there was 4 boys went in that mine. The owner, William Burnett, he was in there also. There was four people were landed under a sheet of solid slate. All right, the first two boys got killed instantly. They took them all out of the mine. And the next day, the 3rd person died, and the 4th person said he was going to die, but he ended up living and had a broken back. But anyway, this is where the people in Sargo would get their coal for the winter for their stoves. And then they was going to open up. A little bit later, they released it to another guy, but they never opened it back up. So it only operated about 8 months. So when they quit getting coal here, they had to go to West Louisville, the coal mines, or St. Raphael area, and get their coal for the winter.
Electricity would not reach Sargo until the 1930s.
It became a big thing because the farmers who had dairy cows, you had to cool the milk, and they could buy coolers and store the milk, and they had milkers, electric milkers for the first time instead of milking by hand. And it was a big thing before them because they would put electric in the houses, and most of them old houses years ago, they only put like 1 outlet in each room, and they'd have 1 light hanging down in the middle of the room.
Sargo was greatly affected by the flood of 1937 and served as a place of refuge for dozens of displaced families from surrounding communities.
The 1937 flood got real high. In fact, it got in Sargo. It got it was all in downtown Sargo. It got in the Sargo Baptist Church. And St. Mary Magdalene Church is over on the Highway 56 side. It got up to the front step on that, and around where the Woodman Hall is, it got all around there, and I've got a picture that shows where they had the tobacco sticks on the side of the road so people could tell where the road was. The Red Cross had a stop. They had they put up a station there in the Woodman's Hall because they went back out in the water in a lot of these little towns like Curdsville and Burke City and hauled out a lot of people who got stranded.
In the fall of 1937, the Sargo Consolidated School opened next to Pleasant Grove Church. It replaced 9 one-room schools.
Sargo one-room school started right there on Highway 56 and where the Knott Road is. It's right there, right next to where St. Mary Magdalene Church is now. I think it was opened like in the 1880s. It stayed there until 1937 when they built a new Sargo Consolidated School, because when they built the Sargo Consolidated School, the counties were starting to close a lot of one-room schools down. They closed 9 one-room schools down for that one school. That closed down the Sargo School, the Harris School, the Grant School, the Haydentown School, the Lower Pleasant Ridge School, the Pleasant Grove School, and the Rogers School. The Pleasant Grove School was right there next to it was right next door to Sorgho Consolidated School is. That's where the janitor took care of the Sargo School. That's where he lived for a long time. And then, of course, years later, I think like 2011, they moved that out to the Panther Creek Park. And that's where it is today. That school is still standing. Of course, it's been restored. And of course, the Haydentown School is still standing. But it's a private home now. It's over on Hayden Bridge and Abbey Bridge Road. It's still there. And the bell for the Harris Schoolhouse is sitting right out there in my backyard.
Faith has been central to the people of Sargo since the very beginning. Pleasant Grove Church is the oldest congregation, organized in May of 1835 in the home of Andrew Jones on Panther Creek. The original cabin no longer exists, but was 3 or 4 miles from the present church on Highway 56. 2 other churches were established from Pleasant Grove. After the Civil War, Little Flock Baptist Church was founded on Hambleton Ferry Road. Then in 1883, Sargo Baptist was formed. The current building on Highway 1554 was dedicated in 1926 after the original church was destroyed in a fire. A local store owner, W.E. Clark, donated land for the first Catholic church, St. Mary Magdalene, in 1907. There were 36 families that made up the first congregation. Robert Knott is one of the oldest living residents of Sargo and a longtime member of the church.
Well, the old church, they claim that Ernest Hampton, some of them brought that up from the Green River, Hamilton's Ferry, on horse and team. Brought the lumber up there for that and built that in 1907. I remember when the new church was built, because I was there with the server as the altar boy, and when the cornerstone was put in there, 1948. Was my father bought the farm up there behind the Catholic Church in 1930, and I grew up in that area right around here. All the subdivisions, and none of that was around here at that time, and very few houses that's still here are still around. It's been tore down or burnt down. There used to be about three grocery stores in Sargo. One, Virgil Hancock had a garage there, done welding and odds and ends. Lynn Coots was one of the old ones. He had probably every little tool that you can imagine of. Then there was, like I say, a tavern. And you remember the tavern, George Merritt Tavern in Sargo. And a telephone company had switchboard there. If you call a certain number, usually had about 5 different people on the telephone line when you had back in them days, which it caught fire and burned up. Remember pumping gas up there at the Head's Grocery was about 16 cents a gallon at that time. And that was a big deal. I remember I was in high school, and we had some of the kids around there would ride a bicycle to town and go to a movie, which there wasn't no traffic much on Highway 56 back that time. My granddad, Mattingly, on my mother's side, He remembered when this road 56 was dirt road with no blacktop. And they said they'd drive cattle to Owensboro on that road. I went to school there up to the 8th grade at St. Mary Magdalene there. And back then we had teachers that's pretty strict on everybody, tough. And they always had to build a fire in the school. I built fires in there. Go down there I got 10 cents a fire, 30 cents a day, and that was big mucks back then. And you could buy a candy bar for a nickel, a soft drink, and that was a big treat back then.
Elaine Grant has fond memories of her life growing up in Sargo on a farm.
I was born April 17, 1946. Daddy had just gotten out of the Navy, and he married a local girl, an Ebelhar, Grady's aunt. And after Daddy left the Navy, they came here and settled, which had been both their home parishes and home community. And so I grew up in the Sargo area, and I've been here all my life except when I went off to college. Well, believe it or not, Sargo had two grocery stores, Head's Grocery and Whitaker's Grocery. And people would trade with first one and then the other. And people didn't get out very much like they do now. Well, transportation was limited and people worked long hours. Everybody was engaged in farming until General Electric increased and began to hire some people in the county. So on Sunday after church, we could always count on stopping at the grocery store. Now, the kids stayed in the car while the parents went into the grocery store and did their little shopping. And so we didn't get out much other than church and church activities and family. So that was our whole world. Went to school there, rode the bus with some what we know now as public school kids, but then we didn't know that. We were Catholics and non-Catholics. And we were all friendly with each other. We all liked each other. There were two denominations, best to my memory, the Baptists and the Catholics. Everybody got along great. There was no difference. We didn't know there was any difference in anybody. They just happened to go to a different church than we did. And families were together, always neighborly. There was no division. It's just a great time to grow up. We were self-sustaining. All the farms were, except for flour and bananas. That was a big thing, that my parents would buy. Cereal. And that was it. Everything else, we had meat, we had cheese, we had milk, we had all the vegetables. We canned all summer. We grew up eating really well. A lot of people say that we, and I mean this collectively, they would say, we were so poor. I think, no, we weren't. We ate so well.
Tom Vogel has lived his entire life in Sargo.
And I was born and raised right here on this farm. As a matter of fact, I was born in 1940 in a double log cabin. So I go back a long way, and I was born at home naturally, like everybody was at that time. And I went to St. Mary Magdalene through grade school, and graduated from Owensboro Catholic High School. Also, my dad and mother farmed 111 acres here, corn and tobacco, and hay and cattle during their lifetime. But then, about the time my dad retired, soybeans began to come in, and herbicides came available too. But my dad never did grow a soybean in his life, but I'm sure.
Vogel remembers many of the early businesses in Sargo.
There was two grocery stores and one beer joint, and I don't remember ever being a post office in Sorgho. I've read some of the history, and there was at one time, but Mr. George had a grocery store. Mrs. Medley had a grocery store, and Ms. Medley stayed in the grocery business until she got retirement age, or even after that, really. She was there a long time.
her store was just like a Walmart, only a smaller version. She had everything that you would want. If you couldn't find it, you'd go up there and tell her, and she'd walk right back here and pick it up. And she knew where everything was. And she had an old bread box out of the front of the store. It was a Honey Crust box, and the bread man would get there in the morning before she would. So they'd open the door up, top door up, and put the bread in. When she got to the store, she'd get the bread out and take it inside. Of course, you can't do that nowadays because people are stealing stuff. But she had a gasoline pump then, and of course back then gas was in the 30 cents, 35, 40 cents. But anyway, everybody knew Miss Medley, and she knew everybody else. And you could go in there and she could tell you your family history. She knew everybody because she would talk, and she knew everything and everybody.
There was a tavern if you was coming into Sargo out of Owensboro, there was a beer joint, a beer tavern on the right-hand side of the road next door to Ms. Medley's grocery. And it was there for a long, long time. And Red Saltzman wound up buying it, and then he moved across the road into what had been one of George Head's grocery store building, and developed Red's Fish House of the South, they called it, and that was his main thing that people knew him by, but Friday night catfish.
Oh, the fish was just wonderful. The family still won't give up the recipe, but I mean, you can duplicate it, but it was really good. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too salty, it was just right.
The fish was really good. Red had a little knack about cooking catfish. He would, because he had a beer joint, he cooked it a little bit spicy so you could drink more beer. That was my opinion. That may not be true, but that was his recipe, and it was good. People liked it, and people come from everywhere to eat at Red's catfish place.
I'd go up at Red's and eat breakfast there a lot of mornings. I would, and there'd be several other farmers come in there, the same 7 or 8 of us, and eat rummers breakfast and discuss the day's work and tell jokes and this and that. So that was good pastime. Or maybe in the evening run up there and drink beer.
And every year he would have Red Saltzman's picnic, and it was a political thing and put on by Red himself, but with a lot of help naturally. And it was a big to do. I shook Miss McConnell's hand there. That was one I remember, and of course I shook a lot of other politicians' hands, but Miss McConnell was the one I still remember the most,
When I came home from college for Thanksgiving, 1964, my freshman year of college, there was some bulldozing work going on, taking down the woods. Now, there were 2 woods up here on Hayden Bridge Road in 56, coming down 56 to the ditch. And so then houses began to build. So every time I would come home, and I did not come home very often, my world was Western, but there would be another house built by the Richardson brothers. They developed that lot. Bobby Knott's sister, Martha, had married Richard O'Brien, and she built one of the first houses up there, almost in the corner of 56 and Hayden Bridge Road. So that was the beginning of subdivisions being developed out here in this area.
All the places that were subdivisions in the Sargo area, that was all farmland in my lifetime. Even Woodland Acres, which is the oldest subdivision out here.
Hayden Bridge Road, is that?
Yes, Hayden Bridge Road and junctions with 56. That was a farm, and I know the fellow that built the subdivision. I don't know his first name, but they always called him Shorty Richardson, and he had a couple of sons that stayed in the business after Shorty retired, and they built the subdivision just north of Sargo on opposite side of the road from Woodland Acres, and but then since then the whole Hollandy farm in my lifetime, that's all covered up with houses now. So yeah, there's been a tremendous amount of change in the period of time that I've lived here, which has been basically all my life, in the Sargo area,
I used to, as many as 15 years ago, leave here, even in retirement. I could leave here, go to town, and never pass a car. And now, because of all the development, it's just one car right after the other, going and coming both ways, any time of the day. I recently said that to my brother. Have you noticed how much traffic there is out here? He said, oh, yeah.
This is the Hamilton Ferry site on the Green River, just about 2 miles west of Sargo. It was first opened in 1799. Over the years, it had 6 different owners. It started out, the Calhouns, used to be called Calhoun Ferry at one time, and then it became the Hamilton Ferry.
Well, yeah, we would walk over there, and my mother and dad didn't approve of this, but we'd walk over there and ride across the river with the ferryman when he'd take a car or two across, and wait around over there till another car showed up and come back, My mother and dad was especially, they were scared to death of Green River.
The Hamilton Ferry was operated for 160 years, and when they built the parkway, of course, they took away all the this was the Owensboro-Henderson Road, and it was old Highway 54. And when they built the parkway, the ferry traffic slowed down to little or nothing. It was built in the 1969 and 1970. It goes from Owensboro to Henderson, and right behind me is Bellwood Hill, and they cut through this hill, and they went through the bottoms behind Sargo.
A lot of farmers say, oh, we'll never, I'm going through that bottoms there behind Sargo. Well, that's too low. They can't build a highway in there. They did. They hauled the dirt in there and kept building it. They were looking for dirt. They went down there one morning. That guy come in there at Red's and restaurant, said, today we're going to buy dirt. Some farmer's going to give in. We're going to get our dirt. And he got her.
Yeah, they built the toll road right in a curve. And the only thing that made it beneficial to us is that the 36 acres on the north side of the toll road, they took about 10 feet of that dirt off for the levee going up to the bridge. And of course, we got paid for the dirt.
The only thing I remember mostly about the Audubon is that the people didn't like that farmland was being taken through eminent domain, and people also didn't like that they didn't think farmers were getting a fair market value for their property. Or it was based on fair market value, but farm people didn't think that was really fair, because remember, every acre they gave up, they forever lost income on that acreage. And and the only reason I remember this, because normally I wasn't involved in political matters or community matters much, was that I think my mother was on a jury for people who weren't happy.
When they built this parkway, it's of course it's straight, and the farms are square. A lot of farms are square, so they cut a lot of corners. And you'll have one farm that might have an acre here and 50 over here, or up here the farm that my dad owned. It was a 73-acre farm, and the other side it was 4/10 of an acre left. So it became landlocked, so it's worthless, So it changed a lot of people's way they worked around here, way they farmed. And
my mother and dad was already retired and in their later years, and they really hated to see their farm cut up like that, But having the opportunity to sell the field dirt, it took some of the pressure off of them, and I know my dad would sit at the kitchen window and watch traffic on the toll road the first year or so, And he said, I thought, well, that road's not like Highway 60, or there won't be a half a dozen cars on it today. And he said, I couldn't believe how many cars would run up and down that road,
I worked in Henderson for 10 years. I loved going up and down the Audubon. It was a wonderful ride. It still is. I go to Evansville that way. I love the Audubon.
The on and off ramps here, I think, were built in 1992 or 94. They were built about 30 years after, or 20 years after the parkway, because they didn't have an entrance to get on between the Green River and Owensboro, so they finally decided to put one here mainly on account of Scott Paper going in down here too, So it gives them a place to get off Owensboro to go to Henderson, go to Owensboro the way, and it keeps a lot of traffic off going through Sargo area.
The airport Sargo Fire Department has served the community since 1974. Pat Thompson is the fire chief.
The Airport Sargo Fire Department was formed back in the 70s, in the early 70s. So we've been here right at 50 years. The piece of land that we're standing on was donated by a local farmer from the community. And this station was built as a substation to us having equipment at the airport. Therein lies the name of Airport Sargo Fire Department. So we're in a unique situation out here. When we were formed, they put us way out at the far west end of our district. Our district's actually from the airport station in what they used to define as a 5-mile circle. Now it's 5 driving miles. That's how the insurance service offices rated the response for insurance purposes for people to have homeowners insurance. So we were placed out here as a gap between the station at the airport and the station in St. Joe. So back in the 70s when this was formed, we were kind of a substation. So we actually only go about a mile west of here, and then everything else is towards the city of Owensboro. We have approximately 33, 34 volunteer firefighters. That kind of fluctuates. We have some that have been on a while, and we have some very new ones. We are a pretty young department. We have some older people like me on the department, but we have some 18-year-olds as well. So we're a pretty diverse. We have a lot of diversity amongst our membership. We hold training here every Monday night, usually about 41, 42 nights out of the year. We cut back to every other week during the summertime. We take off during spring break, Memorial Day, Labor Day, a couple of weeks at Christmas time and things. But we have the opportunity to train here about every Monday night for our volunteer firefighters. So that's the staffing wise. We make approximately 600 to 650 runs a year. Last year's about 650. It doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not a lot. I mean, that's less than 2 a day, on the average, but we may go 3 or 4 days and not have a run at all, and then we may hit where we run 4 or 5 runs like we did yesterday. So it's different, and everything has changed over the years. Since we took on an EMS response role in the community as a support of the ambulance service, along with the ALS program that Daviess County Fire provides, 70% of our runs are EMS related. That's not counting vehicle accidents, et cetera. So only about 30% of our calls actually involve fire alarms, structure fires, field fires, vehicle accidents with injury, et cetera. So those numbers are low. We are blessed to have almost 25 EMS personnel out here. Some are medics, they don't practice as medics here, or some are advanced EMTs, they don't practice as advanced EMTs here, but we have a ton of EMTs and EMRs, emergency medical responders. So we're a very diverse group. We're spread out all over the community, so getting to someone quickly in a medical emergency is great, and we can put someone on scene in a couple of minutes and start life-saving measures, which we have done before. A little bit about our station. Our station's about 50 years old. We currently have 2 fire engines, a rescue truck, a brush truck mini pumper. We have a pickup truck, which hauls either or piece of equipment. We have a gator, a John Deere gator with wildland firefighting and EMS capabilities, and we also have a hovercraft. Hovercraft's a little bit different piece of equipment than most of the other water rescue type equipment that they have. One of our goals, and it's recognized by the Insurance Service Organization, is our community risk reduction. And community risk reduction means that we actively pursue efforts in fire prevention really geared toward the 2 most vulnerable parts of our community, which are children under the age of 6 and the elderly. So we always make attempts to try to provide, first off, EMS response at events like the one that you helped put on last year when you did the Touch a Truck. Yeah. So we're able to do that. We do a safety day. We're at the cottage. We're at River Valley Behavioral Health, had a big picnic and employed us out there to provide stuff, et cetera. So we do a lot of things in the community. We do a water day for Sargo. We go to Audubon Elementary. We got a lot of schools in our district. So we try to be active and maintain that presence, and which is always could be a recruitment tool for us to get volunteers.
Agriculture is a vital part of the local economy, with rich productive soil producing corn, wheat, and soybeans. Brad Stephen is a 5th-generation farmer.
I was not born and raised here, but my family's got deep roots here in Sargo, mainly row crop, corn and soybeans, a little bit of wheat, but Transitioned from tobacco. And originally started, my granddad had a lot of sows and was a hog farmer, and just migrated away from that over the years.
Historically, Daviess County was a large producer of burley tobacco, used primarily for the manufacture of cigarettes. Some burley remains, though it pales in comparison to the thousands of acres planted years ago. Reminders of this once prominent cash crop are everywhere, as wooden tobacco barns dot the landscape around Sargo. Brad Stephen explains the decline.
Tobacco is it's no longer profitable. Too slim of margins to continue to raise. I know it sustained many generations on the farm, but the industry's just changed so much, and from all the red tape and the cost of production and the different weathering patterns has affected it too. You know, we get large rains at one time, and tobacco cannot sustain that, and it's just become harder to make a profit on large-scale tobacco operations, and lots of old infrastructure. You've seen a lot of these old barns, and you know, you just only repair them so much, and there's not enough profit in tobacco to build new barns. And so most of it on weather changes and infrastructure is why I think the tobacco's gone away.
On a trip through Sargo today, few businesses remain in the downtown at the intersection of French Island Road and Highway 56. Grady Ebelhar points out where stores used to exist.
Okay, we're in downtown Sorgho right now. Right behind me here, this is where George Head lived, and next to it was this grocery store, the Head's grocery store. Right next to that is the old Woodman's Hall. It was built like in 1900. It was a Woodman of the World had it, and over the years people would rent it out, have parties in it. There was people lived in it too, and right next down from it is Mary Ruth Medley had a Medley's Market at one time. Her and her husband she was in there like 40 years before she moved further down the road. But right next to that, the old gray building up here, was George Merritt had a tavern there, and the house next to it is his house where he lived, and that's where Red Sauceman started, in the George Merritt tavern right here. And then years later, the building right across the road right here, it was a Steele's Tavern one time. Then it became Steele's Grocery. Then it became Whitaker's Grocery, and then Red Sauceman moved in here, and this is where it became Red's Fish House of the South. That's where they had big political picnics. He's had all kind of, over the years, it was a big deal, political picnic, and they had governors, they had senators here over the years. This was a big place at one time. And right behind this here was a garage at one time. It became a feed mill. It was started out as a feed mill, then it became a garage. Jiggs Barker had a garage there like 10 years. He lived in the Woodman Hall. And then it belonged to G.C. Spencer. He was the first guy from Owensboro that drove the NASCAR Cup Series. It'd sit there for years empty, and then they tore it down. They built the KC Hall. Now, at present time, it's the KC's of Sargo.
Well, in what we would call downtown Sorgho, is a pretty dead. There's not any stores or anything like that going on. Of course, up east of Sargo a little bit, you have the Dollar General and the Quick Pick, or those, even Stevens, yeah. But right in the heart of downtown Sargo, there's the old established residence, and that's it. It's where I went to school. It's where we grocery shopped, not our main grocery shop place, but then we shopped for groceries there, and no telling how many bottles of pop we bought there from Ms. Medley, but it was in a sense it was a place to go. It was like a little center hub, for the surrounding county, part of the Daviess County, and it was a good place to live.
The Cottage has been central to Sargo's modern revival, a farm stand and bakery with pastries, coffee, and lunch options. Marlene Knight is the owner.
So I am a convention planner by trade, and was starting to think about what my next retirement job actually would look like. And this little house the cottage was a little house that was built on our farm originally for tenant farmers. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking when we had the place available again, I was going to turn it into a coffee shop, a little muffin store, or something like that. So things progressed, and here we are. We were able to open as originally with just muffins and coffee, and then we added breakfast sandwiches, we added lunch. Of course, now we're doing the catering, we're doing events, and added our strawberry festival, our pumpkin and pickle festival, really trying to support our local farms. Everything we do, our business model is about growing local and making our products with locally produced foods from right here in Daviess County and supporting each other. And we absolutely love living here. We've always said, if we win the lottery, we are not moving. We are going to do something about that Ottoman Parkway to get to our house from one side of our farm to the other, a bridge, a tunnel. But other than that, this is a great community. People are very friendly, very nice, and we love living here.